And welcome to the Stan Simpson Show, a program about Connecticut people and compelling issues. Make it a point to drop in every week. Some are calling a pending law to reduce prison sentences for inmates who participate in self-improvement programs soft on crime. Others say, hold up, it's about Connecticut getting smart on crime. Former House Majority Leader Bill Dyson is here, a prison reform advocate, with Andrew Clark, also a reform activist, here in studio. We'll talk about the merits of the law, which awaits the governor's approval. In our second segment, we'll talk about a recent study showing that married couples reside in only 48% of all households, an historically low percentage. What does it all mean, and how can you live financially independent after divorce? Attorney and mediator Lori Giles joins us for a chat. Then we'll wrap things up with a local playwright who has produced a tribute to the godfather of soul, James Brown, that will be showcased Saturday in Hartford. But first, a new era for Connecticut inmates. Bill Dyson, Andrew Clark, distinguished professor at CCSU, distinguished director at the new institute, or the emerging institute at CCSU.
Just call me Bill.
Just call you Bill, call you Andrew.
Yeah. Call me
you guys have been on the front lines on the whole prison reform issue. Big deal, this law passing, pending the governor signing. What does it mean?
I think, first of all, and from the top of the show, you indicated a reward for a break for inmates. I think of it as an incentive for inmates to work harder, to become better, to get themselves on with their lives.
Why should we incent them? Aren't these criminals? Why should we give any kind of incentives at all?
Well, you give incentives to people in prison to get into the programs that have been proven to reduce recidivism at the end. So in the end, it's all about public safety. And if you get folks into those programs, you're going to improve public safety.
But changes only happen when it comes down to money, right? You guys know this. $700 million budget, an 18,000 prison system. If we didn't have this crunch right now, would we see these talks taking the movement that it has?
It's questionable if we would see these talks taking place now. But I think what we have done over the years is that this issue has become so politicized that one is automatically viewed as soft on crime if you want to deal with things in a rational fashion. So what we've been doing is dealing with it irrationally, which means that as we continue to deal with it in an irrational way, we are forever increasing the cost that we would pay to provide the service. Now, at the same time as we're doing that, guess what gets underfunded? Education. You know, so anybody with a modicum of sanity would say, gee whiz, couldn't you do something better than that? And that's what we're hopefully this will be.
Well, speaking of education, the most startling stats with the prisons, you guys know this, of the 18,000 inmates, 75% have one thing in common. They don't have a high school diploma. Education goes hand in hand. Why not turn these jails into learning academies and have an incentive where you can buy your way out with more degrees or by going to school?
That's why I use the word incentive.
And you can't do that with the more and more people that you put into prison. Because you lose resources. Prison is one of the most costly things you can do in the criminal justice system, approximately $40,000 a year to do it. So the more people you put in, the less people you can put into the types of things that you're talking about. Not only that, the less space you have. If you have overcrowding issues, all of a sudden the classroom becomes a place where you have to have more important things for the prison to do in their mind.
Is it an indictment in the prisons of urban education? When you talk about 75% don't have a high school diploma, also 75% come from urban centers. Are we really talking about these urban schools becoming a farm system for the prison system?
It's an indictment of where we are in America today. It's not just Connecticut, it is Texas, New Jersey, it is Alabama, it's Mississippi. It is a national problem, and that is how do we get our educational system to better serve the people that we're talking about so that we are not likely to end up in a position that we're in now.
So part of this program here, part of this pending law is that if you're an inmate, for the most part, you can reduce your sentence by taking self-improvement programs. And I guess there are certain categories of crime where you will not be allowed to be eligible for that, right? So we have 6 different categories. If you capital felony, of course, you can't do that. Murder, arson murder, home invasion, obviously the whole Cheshire murder situation, first degree aggravated sexual assault, rape. So if you have those issues there on your plate, you cannot buy your way down or earn your way down with these. Now, one glaring omission is kidnapping. Some say, well, gee, kidnapping is missing. Your thoughts on that? Is that an omission, or did that get clarified later?
Actually, I'd say with all of that, they weren't in the original bill. Actually, I think it was more of a political decision on things that were happening at the Capitol to include those crimes that you listed within the bill, because I'm not sure it's based on evidence why those would be in there anyway. Someone's not necessarily more risky because they have a murder on their rap sheet. You could have someone that was in there from they were 14 years old, is now 50, well beyond the age, and did something maybe out of in haste at a young age that is probably less risky than somebody else that's in prison.
That's where the politics come in, right? In order to sell this bill, you have to be able to do that.
Right.
And I would say, and this is kind of a blip in the radar right now. For the past 10 years, actually, Connecticut has been pretty reasoned in its deliberating about criminal justice policy, and it's been to their best interest. Prior to that, for the 20 years preceding, the prison population was growing exponentially. You spent $1 billion in the 90s on prisons, and it was in the last budget crisis in 2003. There's $1 billion budget deficit when they did start to look at things differently. But since then, they have consistently looked at things in that way, in an approach called justice reinvestment, whereby you find savings in the prison community and you reinvest into the places that you were referencing, education and the like. And they've been doing that. I think what happened is in the heat at the end of the legislature, some things become pretty political. This happened in this moment. My hope is that it doesn't make the whole issue politicized, because I really do believe the folks on the other side of the aisle, the folks in the business community really do believe that the earned risk reduction is a decent way to go.
And it's also hard to keep justifying spending $700 million a year on a system where people are going to be coming back out time and time again, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And they are coming out. They are coming out. With the exception of the few who are there for life. The rest are coming out eventually. See, so the question then becomes, coming out prepared to do what? To engage in what? After the hidden description that you've just given about their educational level, man, we're talking about a potential bomb, that these people coming out not prepared to engage in leading productive lives. Now what?
Will this have staying power? We've all seen what happened with Connecticut. You mentioned, Andrew, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. Expansion boom, building more prisons. They couldn't build enough prisons. They started farming prisoners out of state. Mm-hmm. Now they've stopped, and they're closing down prisons and having entry programs. Will this have staying power, or just another natural cycle where it goes back and forth, back and forth?
It's incumbent on everybody to keep things into perspective, and for the folks that are working in the areas, for instance, us over at Central, the criminal justice policy guru over at OPM, who currently is Mike Lawler, for the governor, to have it on a priority level that warrants the attention that it deserves. And so long as we have that, then people are, I think it will be a consistent policy. The problem is when you have people not paying attention to it in the areas where, in the places where it's important to pay attention, then you divert back, or you convert back to the old, prison politics, and it gets thrown around like a softball, and then things don't make sense and they blow up.
And allow me to interject here. You say, then what after that it takes place? The then what is what we are doing now in many respects. We have established in this state in about 5 regions roundtables, people on the cutting edge of looking at what the needs are and trying to craft programs to deal with those needs, to meet those needs. People are already there, knowing what it is that's going to be happening, what has been happening, people coming out, and the shortcomings that are there that have to be dealt with. They're doing that now. So I think there won't be a slacking off.
I'm going to get in trouble here. I'm going to extend this segment about 30 more seconds to the important issue that's emerging, the children of inmates. I know, Andrew, you're on the front lines with studies here. This is the next frontier. What happens to the children of inmates and their situation? Explain that. 30 seconds. Let's talk about that.
Well, it's not the next frontier for those children and for the communities where they're highly impacted in, because they've been experiencing it for the past 30 years. But
they're more likely, they're like 5 times more likely to end up in prison themselves, right?
That's a stat that's been thrown out there. You can't actually justify it in numbers, because no one actually tracks who these kids are.
What's the concern? 30 seconds. What's your concern?
I'd say the biggest concern is for people to realize that when you put someone in prison, you just don't impact that one person. You impact an entire family, you impact an entire neighborhood, an entire community, and eventually the entire state and nation. So.
All right, Andrew Clark, Bill Dyson, thanks for your time, guys. When we come back, folks, we'll talk about historically low numbers for married couples and how to live financially free after divorce. Don't forget, you can catch us 24/7 online at ctnow.com/stand. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, too.